Good afternoon. My name is Gerlach. It's great to be here. I'm going to talk about the third and final core value in our school, which is liberty. But I want to share our family's own experience and story first before I jump into that. Vicki and I, 6 years ago, were living out in Eagle Mountain, and we have 10 children, and two of our boys, Rex and Charles, were just not flourishing in school. And Rex had been born with a cleft, and he hadn't been able to hear for a couple of years. He was 2 and 3 years old, so his language, we hadn't realized it, and his language hadn't been developing, he wasn't speaking. And by the time he got that corrected, he was way behind. And we jumped into special education programs at the public schools and began working and doing our best with that. And he just was not making much progress. And as we met with the principal and the teachers at the schools that we were at, I asked whether we needed to hold it back, and they said, no, we don't do that here anymore, and explore their options, and it just just didn't feel right. And so we began to prayerfully look for other alternatives for these boys. I gotta tell you that Charles, by the way, didn't have any excuse. He just wasn't working it, wasn't doing well. But those two boys just weren't going to read, and they weren't moving forward. We found the American Heritage School and talked to a couple of parents that had children here and just had marvelous experiences. And so we decided to come and tour the school and talk to the administration. And I'm sure our experience was a lot like yours. The moment we stepped into the doors, there was a feeling here of something special, something different, something sacred. And we fell in love with the place. And after a year of driving a kindergartner, who of course was on the half-day shift, and I don't know how many other kids we had in there at the time, but it was 3 trips a day from Eagle Mountain, which was about 3 hours of driving a day. We decided to move. And as we moved our home to be closer to the school, we're now just 3/4 of a mile down the road, so we could be here. And our boys began to flourish. Within just a couple of years, they started to do pretty well. And Rex was still lagging behind, and then he took 8th grade. It was 8th grade with Mrs. Updike. So 7th grade. 8th, 7th, okay, 7th grade. They do a master project. And I don't know if you heard about the master project yet, but it's a piece of work. They work them hard. And I really had some concerns about this because my son had never done well, and he was still really behind, and he wasn't reading all that well, and relative to his peers. And I expressed some concerns, and Mrs. Updike looked me in the eye, and she said, I have gotten to know this young man that is your son, and he can do this. And she believed in him, even when I did not. And she kept encouraging him and kept telling him he could do this, and he did. He jumped in, he worked hard, he loved his project, he struggled and was disciplined, and by the end of that year, this miracle happened. He had a sense of self-confidence, and he learned to work. I no longer had to follow up on him with homework, and I have not to this day, since that 7th grade project was finished, followed up with him on his homework. He gets it done, his grades are excellent, and he's flourishing. And that's the kind of transformational teaching and transformational learning that happens here. The teachers teach with the Spirit. They love your students, and they get to know them individually. And it's an experience unlike you'll find anywhere else. We've just been so grateful to be here. I'm going to share one other experience with you because I do think there is a hazard that I want to warn you from. In coming to a school here, there are so many really great things that are done here that sometimes it's easy to get, I think, a little bit distracted and even maybe competitive as parents as we look around and see what's happening. My wife and I went to the American Heritage Lyceum Philharmonic Orchestra, which you will hear. They are incredible, as is the choir here. The music and the drama here are just absolutely elevating and inspiring and second to none. I remember attending this concert with Kason Brown in the Lyceum Orchestra, and they played, I forgot the name of the Jupiter's theme, is If You Could Hide a Coal, that music, which is just gorgeous. And I was lifted and I was inspired and I just felt carried away, and I walked out thinking, I want that for my kids. Let's get our 6 kids into orchestra. And so I went home and I said, Vicki, could you please get some recommendations for teachers, and let's get our kids signed up for music. And so she said, okay, and she began to do this searching and looking, and our kids started to express their interest in the violin, the viola, the bass, the cello, whatever. We didn't get it done, and we went and heard another concert, and I felt that same kind of, just started to feel a little guilty about it, that we haven't gotten this done. And I was going to the temple, and I was at the temple, and I had the impression to pray about this, and I stopped and I said, Heavenly Father, about this music thing, we haven't gotten that done, I'm real sorry, and are we supposed to be doing this? And I got a real clear answer, and the answer was no. Your family has a mission. Each of your children have a mission. And your job is not to sign them all up in orchestra this year. It's to work with me to find out what their missions are and make sure that you're doing the things that each of them need to do in order to fulfill their missions for me. Now I got to tell you, there was this huge guilt that just came off my shoulders as soon as I heard that answer. And I want you to remember, as I talk about liberty, that the principle of liberty is really about individual choice. And one of the great principles that, and I believe our administration and our teachers understand this principle very well, is each of your children have a mission. And God has given them exactly the talents and the interests and the weaknesses and the problems that will help them to fulfill their unique mission for the Lord in their life. There will be doors that will close for them because of things that they feel they cannot do or do not want to do, and there will be doors that open for them. And those will be the right doors to close and to open. And I have learned as a parent of 10 that if I just hang on and trust the Lord a little bit, that even when things seem to be going very, very badly, it seems very, very important to me that He's in charge and that everything is headed in the right direction. If I just hang on and have a little faith and look for some revelation and direction. So our third and final core value is liberty, as I mentioned, and specifically choosing moral self-government as the foundation for thriving individuals, families, and communities. So American Heritage is the name of our school, right? So that kind of tells you that it communicates our love of the Founding Fathers and our Constitution. So every year there's this beautiful and inspiring dramatic program that, is it the 5th graders that put that on for us? And the choirs, and they reenact all of the events that led up to the founding of our nation, including the Magna Carta and the Pilgrims landing in America and governing themselves through something that was a little bit like a constitution. They talk about the founding, they talk about the Reformation, Tyndale and Wycliffe and so on, and Luther, and they talk about the Restoration and Joseph Smith. And in this beautiful reenactment, you see these students acting out these events that led to the establishment of liberty in our nation, and they connect those events to the restoration of the gospel, which could only have been brought forth in a nation that espoused and protected religious liberty. And so these students begin to develop this love, and in addition to reenacting the foundational events that established liberty in our nation, our scholars memorize quotes from founding fathers, as well as pieces of our founding documents, and thereby learning the principles that underlie the Constitution. They compete in Constitution Bowls, and they write essays for the BYU Freedom Festival. By the way, our students almost swept the entire set of awards last year at the BYU Freedom Festival. I don't know if you know that, but K through 12 were there 15 awards, and I think we earned 12 or 13 of them, our students did, statewide, K through 12. Our students, they come away, our scholars come away with an understanding and a love for the Constitution and for freedom that is absolutely marvelous, and that's why they do so well in these events. When they compete with other schools, our students call themselves the Patriots, right? That's our mascot. And patriots they are indeed and will be long after they leave these halls. At the very center of all these principles that these students learn relating to liberty, they learn this one key idea, that liberty depends on our individual choices. They learn that when we govern ourselves according to righteous principles, there is very little need for civil law. The opposite is also true. As we turn away from righteous principles and further descend into wickedness and immoral behavior, the more difficult it is for freedom to survive and thrive. Benjamin Franklin said, only a virtuous people are capable of freedom. As nations become more corrupt and vicious, they have more need of masters. And Patrick Henry said, bad men cannot make good citizens. It is when a people forget God that tyrants forge their chains. Let me read that again. It is when a people forget God that tyrants forge their chains. No free government or the blessings of liberty can be preserved to any people but by a firm adherence to justice, moderation, temperance, frugality, and virtue. And even before learning these principles, in their very first years at American Heritage, our scholars begin to learn self-government. I had a kindergartner that would come home, and sometimes his homework got done, and sometimes it didn't, and sometimes he was nice to other kids, and sometimes he wasn't. And we had discussions with teachers, and they always began with this idea of, William, you need to learn self-government. That vocabulary and that concept and that principle were introduced right at the beginning for these students. And the principle was, you need to choose. You need to choose what you're going to do. And you need to choose well, because it makes a difference for you and for others. I was inspired by our student body, who, I think it was 2 years ago, or was it last year, we had the I Choose campaign. The student body rolled out this celebration, really, of individual liberty and of self-government in the form of this I Choose campaign. They chose to be a friend to others. They chose to work hard. They chose to remember. They chose to make a difference. It was beautiful. Our scholars also learn that moral self-government is key not only to our national freedom, but also to our individual freedom and to our ability to thrive as individuals and families. As they learn truth through scholarship and their efforts to refine their character, they are free. Jesus said, and ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free. And so liberty becomes the culminating value for our scholars. As our scholars develop Christ-centered character, as their minds are inspired by transformational teaching and learning, they learn to choose moral self-government and to thrive as individuals, families, and communities. And so these three core values, these three pillars of what we're about here at American Heritage, character, scholarship, and liberty, come together to accomplish our mission. As I read our mission, I just want you to think about how each of these three values are interrelated and support each of these things. So number one, be useful in the hands of the Lord in building the kingdom of God on earth. You see how choice, self-government, character, and scholarship all allow us to be more useful in the hands of the Lord. Increase faith in and knowledge of the plan of salvation. Again, our choices, our knowledge, and our character all work together to develop faith. Develop a love, understanding, and appreciation for America and the Founding Fathers. Okay, again, a little bit more direct there in terms of the liberty connection, but character is critical there too, as is knowledge of the founding and the events and the principles it's based on. Number four, develop the basic academic knowledge and skills necessary to be able to make self-education a lifelong pursuit. Again, the principles of choice, scholarship, character come through there for lifelong knowledge, self-education, or lifelong pursuit of knowledge and education. Learn to reason and discern between right and wrong, truth and error. See again, choice, liberty, character, knowledge, all being key to that. Develop character and self-discipline of mind and body, and conduct themselves in all aspects of life as Christians. Again, those three principles, those three values come through in every one of our sevenfold points of our mission. I'm so grateful for the principles that are taught here, for inspired and inspiring teachers who understand and love these principles, and for an administration that knows each student individually. This is amazing to me, but I walked in one day to pick up a student. I was a relatively new parent at the school, and Mr. Beckwith stopped me at the door and said, "How are you, Brad?" He said, "Where was Charles today? Is he okay? Is he homesick today?" He knew which one of my kids had been homesick and wanted to know how he was doing out of the almost 1,000 students here. I was touched. And you'll see that. You'll see that in the school. I also appreciate the real commitment to supporting parents that you'll see here. Have interactions with individual teachers, and always the responses I've gotten have been supportive and flexible, and have been just wonderful. I look forward to another great year here at American Heritage, and I welcome you. You're in for a fantastic treat for first-time parents, and again, so grateful that you've entrusted your children to the school, and I look forward to the difference that they'll make. Thank you.